The weird thing about the Flight Sounds DUALPRO-GA is that it can make your flight simulator sound worse in exactly the way that it makes it feel more real.
Clear to land, runway 89 Alpha.
A good gaming headset gives you clean, polished and wide audio, and for most games, that is exactly what you want. In a small plane, however, the audio has a different job. It is direct, compressed, functional, and familiar.
Hotel Echo Alpha Tower, right turn out, wind 3308, gusting 16 from Bravo, clear takeoff, runway 30.
Clear takeoff, runway 30 from Bravo and Golf Telegraph.
You hear the radio, you hear yourself through the headset, and the whole sound environment feels like an intercom in a real GA cockpit. That is why I wanted to test this unit, because on paper it looks like a USB adapter for aviation headsets, but in actual use it feels much closer to a small two-seat aviation audio interface for your flight simulator. It lets you plug the real General Aviation headset into your computer, and in a few minutes I'll explain why $339 DUALPRO-GA can make sense with the right setup, even though Flight Sounds also has a much cheaper solo GA option for around $99. Inside the box, you get the desk mounting bracket, a QR card for the manual, a USB cable, an auxiliary audio cable, feedback card that can extend the warranty, and the unit itself. The unit feels solid in hand with a rugged and practical feel that I really appreciate, because aviation headsets can be expensive and I want a device sitting between the headset and the computer to feel serious. The front panel is easy to understand. You have a computer audio knob, separate volume controls for channel 1 and channel 2, and each channel has its own squelch control. The important part is that you can connect two aviation headsets at the same time. So one person can sit in the pilot seat, another person can sit beside them, and both can hear simulator through the real aviation headset with their own volume controls. That two headset setup is where this product came much more interesting to me. I actually used it with my son before his first ride in our DA40. Before we went to the real airplane, I plugged two headsets into the DUALPRO-GA, loaded the simulator, and walked him through the flight sequence so he could get used to wearing headset, hearing voices through it, and understanding what that part of cockpit experience would feel like before we ever go to the airport. That was the moment when the product clicked, because flight training is not only about checklists, headings, and procedures. A big part of flying is getting comfortable in the environment, and the sound environment is part of that. You need to hear yourself in the headset, listen to radio calls, manage the airplane, and keep your brain ahead of what happens next. Most of my test footage for this review comes from a PilotEdge flight, and the PilotEdge is probably one of the best ways to test a product like this. When you fly in PilotEdge, you're practicing realistic ATC communication, so you're listening for clearances, reading back instructions, changing frequencies, taxiing, flying, and managing workload at the same time.
Santa Barbara Tower, 89 Alpha, holding short, runway 25 on Alpha 1, ready for departure.
Sir, E28 Alpha, Santa Barbara Tower, runway 25, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 25, 8289 Alpha.
Doing that through a real GA headset changes the feel for the whole session. A gaming headset can sound cleaner and more pleasant, but cleaner does not always mean more realistic.
Lufthansa 508, wind 110 register, not runway 08 left, clear takeoff.
Clear takeoff, 08 left, Lufthansa 508, Dankeschön.
With DUALPRO-GA, the audio felt similar in a way I know from flying the actual airplane. It had that cockpit-style sound with a radio, sidetone, and the headset feel like part of the same aviation environment instead of a desktop gaming setup. For student pilots, I think that matters. Radio work can feel intimidating at first, and the hard part is not only knowing the right words. You also have to stay calm while you listen, process, speak, and fly the airplane. Practicing that at home with realistic headset audio will not replace the real flying, but it can make the real cockpit feel less foreign. Setup was straightforward. I connected DUALPRO-GA to the computer over USB, selected it in my input and output device, plugged in the aviation headset, adjusted volume and squelch, and started flying. On the back of the unit, you also get more room to expand, including USB for audio and power, intercom link in and out, aux input and output, rear headset audio connections, and a port for push-to-talk auxiliary module. For most home users, the two front headset connections are probably the main reason to buy this unit, but the rear panel gives you options if you're building something more serious, like a multi-seat cockpit or a small training station. There are also two things to keep in mind. This is mainly an aviation headset product with an internal amplifier designed for aviation headsets, so I would not treat it like a random headphone adapter, and some of the more advanced push-to-talk features require extra Flight Sound software and accessories. Now the price matters because DUALPRO-GA is $339 US, while Flight Sounds also sells cheaper options like Solo GA for around $99 USD. If you fly alone and only need one aviation headset connecting the simulator, the Solo GA may honestly be enough. The reason to choose DUALPRO-GA is two-piece cockpit feel, 2 aviation headsets, separate volume controls, and an audio setup that feels more like a real GA cockpit. For casual simmers who want big cinematic sound, I would probably stay with a good gaming headset. For real pilots, student pilots, instructors, flight schools, or serious simmers building a realistic GA training setup, the DUALPRO-GA makes much more sense because it makes the experience feel more familiar, and for training, that is the part I care about. When I used it with PilotEdge, it sounded like a kind of audio I expect on a real GA cockpit.
Burbank Tower, good evening. November 289 Alpha, 6 miles, straight in, runway 08. Information pop.
Suburban Tower, runway 8, clear to launch.
And when I use it with my son, it helped him understand part of the cockpit experience before his first DA-40 flight. That is why I like it. Simple, practical, and focused on bringing the real aviation headset audio into the sim. If you want to check out Flight Sounds DUALPRO-GA, I'll leave the link in the description. I also have an exclusive PilotEdge code that gives you 10 hours instead of usual 5, so you can try realistic ATC practice with this kind of setup. Subscribe for more realistic simulation, aviation hardware reviews, and real-world perspective. And as always, fly smart, fly safe, and keep chasing those horizons.